Today I will tell you a story about the day I drove 12 hours across states carrying the quilt I had sewn with my own hands for my very first grandchild. When I finally arrived, my daughter looked at me with a sneer and said things I have never been heartbroken like that. 3 days later, the bank called my name, and that phone call would change everything I thought I knew about my family. If this story speaks to you, remember to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts. On Grandma Life Stories, we explore the quiet, powerful moments that reveal the truth of love, betrayal, and resilience. My name is Rosa. I am a retired teacher from Kansas City. I live a simple life in a modest home filled with books, photographs, and the quiet ticking of the old clock on the wall. After my daughter Melissa got married, I began a project in secret, a quilt. It was love woven into fabric, a gift waiting for the day I would become a grandmother. I know those who are looking forward to this sacred thing will also be warm and love with what I do. When Melissa told me she was expecting, I felt like spring sunlight had finally touched my skin after a long winter. I always imaged the look on my daughter's face when she opened it. I thought of laughter, of tears of joy, of belonging. But when I arrived, none of that happened. I knocked. The door opened. Melissa stood there dressed in a light pink maternity dress. For a brief second, her eyes widened in surprise. Then her face hardened. Her lips curled into a thin smile that wasn't a smile at all. "Oh, Mom. We already celebrated yesterday. Just close family. You wouldn't fit in." Behind her, I heard voices, laughter, the clink of glasses. But not one person stepped forward to greet me. Not even my son-in-law Derek, who slipped out of the kitchen only long enough to glance at me, shrug and turn his back. I stood there holding the box with the quilt. My heart felt heavy, but my voice remained calm. "I must have misunderstood the invitation," I said. Melissa didn't answer. She closed the door with a polite firmness, leaving me standing on the porch with nothing but the sound of my own breath. I walked back to the car, placed the quilt on the seat beside me, and started the engine. The rain began to fall softly on the windshield. I did not cry. I only drove steady hands on the wheel, my face still. You see, grief doesn't always scream. Sometimes it is silent, slow like a shadow that follows you without a sound. As I drove away, I asked myself one question over and over: why? Why had my daughter turned me away with such cruelty? The answer did not come that night, but 3 days later, it came in the most unexpected way. The phone rang. It was the bank. They called my name, asking about a loan I had never taken, my signature on the papers, my daughter's name as a witness. That was the moment I felt the ground shift beneath my feet, not only because of the debt, not only because of the lie, but because in that instant I realized something I had refused to see. The fracture in my family was not born from my daughter alone. There was another hand behind it, a hand steady, cold, and calculating, my son-in-law, Derek. I did not know then how deep the betrayal ran. I did not know that I would need courage, the help of strangers, and a community of women called the Silver Circle to face what was coming. But as I sat in the silence of my car with the quilt untouched beside me, I understood one truth. This was only the beginning. When the call from the bank ended, I sat in my car for a long time. The quilt lay beside me like a silent witness. I knew I couldn't go back home right away. I needed space to think, and more than that, I needed someone who would simply listen. Sarah came to my mind. We had taught together at Lincoln Elementary almost 3 decades ago. She was the kind of woman who noticed everything, yet judged nothing. Life had taken her west after retirement, but fate had planted her only 2 towns away from Melissa's place. I hadn't seen her in years. I dialed her number with trembling fingers. Rosa. Her voice, warm as ever, carried both surprise and concern. "Sarah, it's me. I'm in Portland. I come by." There was no hesitation. "Of course. I'll put the kettle on." By the time I reached her house, rain had turned into a steady drizzle. Sarah opened the door with the same smile I remembered from our classroom days. She looked at me, then at the damp box in my hands, and something in her eyes softened. "What happened, Rosa?" I shook my head. I don't even know where to start. Inside her living room smelled faintly of cinnamon and old books. She guided me to the sofa, wrapped a knitted shawl over my shoulders, and waited. I told her everything: the drive, the quilt, Melissa's words at the door, and finally the phone call from the bank. Her hand covered mine. 12 hours only to hear that she exhaled slowly, her brows knitting. "I'm so sorry. No mother should be treated like that." I forced a thin smile. I keep wondering if I misunderstood her. Maybe I did something wrong. Maybe I said something to offend her. Sarah shook her head firmly. "No, don't carry that blame. Something else is going on here. I can feel it." For the first time since I left Melissa's porch, I allowed my voice to crack. She told me I wouldn't fit in, my own daughter. Sarah's eyes glistened. "Then stay here, as long as you need. You won't face this alone." I nodded, grateful but silent. That night, I set the quilt box on the floor by the guest bed. I couldn't bring myself to open it. The stitches inside felt heavier than bricks. The next morning, over coffee, Sarah leaned forward. "Rosa, you said the bank called about a loan in your name?" Her lips tightened. "That's strange. Because a few months ago, I went into the bank downtown to sort out a certificate of deposit, and you won't believe who I saw there." My chest tightened. "Who, Derek?" The name cut through the room like glass. She continued, lowering her voice. He was standing at the counter, talking fast, papers in his hand. The teller asked him something, and he looked nervous, shifty. I remember thinking it was odd. He didn't notice me. I leaned back, breath caught in my throat. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely. I didn't think much of it then. But after hearing your story, Rosa, what if this isn't Melissa at all? What if she doesn't even know what's happening?" Her words hung in the air, unsettling and oddly relieving. A seed of doubt planted itself in my mind. Could it be that Melissa wasn't cruel, just blind to what her husband was doing? Later that afternoon, as I unpacked a few things from my suitcase, I found something wedged between folded sweaters. A thick envelope, bank stationery printed across the corner, my name written in black ink, but I had never put it there. Hands trembling, I brought it to the table. "Sarah, look at this." She leaned closer. "Where did you get it?" "It was in my bag. I didn't pack it. Someone slipped it in." I turned it over, staring at the sealed flap. My instincts screamed at me not to open it just yet. Evidence once disturbed could vanish. Sarah whispered, "This doesn't feel right. If Derek has forged something, we can't let it disappear." I pressed the envelope flat against the table, heart pounding. In that moment, the confusion of the past days shifted into something sharper: fear, suspicion, and the faint outline of resolve. Sarah touched my arm. Maybe Melissa doesn't even know what's going on. Her words settled deep. A possibility I hadn't dared to consider. Perhaps my daughter wasn't my enemy after all. The quilt still lay in its box by the guest bed untouched, but now next to it, an envelope waited. And with it, a path I hadn't expected, one that could either break or save what remained of my family. Let me tell you what happened. It was 3 days after I arrived at Sarah's house when the call came. I had just poured myself a cup of tea, the steam curling upward like a fragile veil, when my cell phone buzzed on the counter. "Mrs. Rosa Marshall." "Yes, this is she. This is Henry Cole from Wells Fargo Bank. I'm calling regarding your loan account." I frowned. "My what your loan account, ma'am?" "The $75,000 line of credit issued under your name." My grip on the phone tightened. There must be some mistake. "I have no such account." The man's tone sharpened, professional but unyielding. "Ma'am, our records clearly indicate the loan was opened 2 months ago. Payments are already overdue. We have your signature on file." The room tilted slightly. I set the cup down with a trembling hand, liquid spilling over the rim. I never signed anything. I never borrowed a cent. I live on a teacher's pension and Social Security. How would I possibly need $75,000? He hesitated. Would you like to come to the branch and review the documents in person? I swallowed hard. Yes. Yes, I would. When I hung up, Sarah was watching me, her face pale. What was that? They say I borrowed $75,000? Her eyes widened. Rosa? No. Yes. My voice cracked. And they claim they have my signature. Sarah grabbed her keys. We're going, right now. The branch was sterile, gleaming too bright. Sarah's hand never left my shoulder. A receptionist led us into a glass-walled office where a man in a gray suit waited. Mrs. Marshall, he said smoothly, I'm Henry Cole. Please sit. He opened a folder, slid papers toward me. Here is the contract. Your signature appears on page 6. I looked down and my breath caught. There it was, my name curling in the same loops I'd practiced as a girl. Identical. That's not me, I whispered. Cole tapped the witness line, and here Melissa Marshall. She signed as a witness. The room spun. Melissa. My daughter. Sarah's chair screeched as she leaned forward. Are you sure this must be wrong? Rosa was in Nebraska in March. I spoke to her every day. Cole adjusted his glasses. The notary verified her identity. Unless you're claiming fraud, I am. My voice rose. That is not my signature. Cole closed the folder carefully. Ma'am, the bank takes forgery seriously. But we also stand by our procedures. Unless you have proof otherwise, the responsibility is yours. Outside, I felt the sun scorch my skin. My knees trembled. Sarah, she signed it. Melissa. Why would she? Sarah shook her head. Don't jump to conclusions. Derek. This reeks of him. But her handwriting steady, deliberate. My chest ached, not like someone forced. Maybe she didn't know what she was signing. I clutched my bag and suddenly remembered the envelope I had found tucked in my suitcase. Still sealed, its weight seemed heavier now. Someone wanted me trapped. 2 days later, Sarah drove me to a legal aid office downtown. The attorney, Linda Cho, was sharp-eyed direct. She spread the papers across her desk, tapping the signature with a pen. It's convincing, she said. If I didn't know, I'd say, genuine. It isn't, I insisted. Then you need evidence, surveillance footage from that date. Did you withdraw $75,000 number? Linda sighed. The account shows transfers. Whoever did this funneled it out immediately, likely to another bank. Sarah asked, and Melissa's signature. That's the problem, Linda replied. A family witness makes it near bulletproof. Unless what? I leaned forward. Unless we prove Melissa was deceived too. If she signed without understanding or Derek tricked her. But if she knowingly signed... Linda hesitated. Then you're up against both your daughter and her husband. I swallowed. I don't want to destroy her. Then decide how far you're willing to go. Sometimes justice costs family. The next morning, I called Melissa. My voice was steady, though inside I was unraveling. Melissa, it's Mom. We need to talk. Her voice was cool, clipped. I don't think that's a good idea. You signed something. At the bank, with my name on it. Silence. Then I don't know what you're talking about. Melissa click. The line went dead. Sarah whispered. She's scared. That wasn't denial, Rosa. That was fear. I went back, demanded to see the notary who had verified me. A woman in her 50s, nervous behind her desk. I don't remember every client, she said, but the ID matched. Which ID? I asked sharply. She blinked. Driver's license, Nebraska. Photo signature. I pulled out my real license. Did she look like this? Her face paled. Yes, but younger. Sarah's voice cut like a blade. A fake ID. Derek had one made. The notary whispered. If that's true, I could lose my commission. You should, I said coldly. Back at Linda's office, we laid it out. Forgery, false ID, fraudulent witness. But to fight, you need allies. Someone inside the system. Sarah tapped her chin. What about the Women's League? Half of them are married to city officials. They'd know judges, clerks. Linda nodded slowly. It could help. Public pressure, media attention. I stared at my hands. I never wanted this fight, but they dragged me into it. If I stay silent, I lose everything. Linda met my eyes. Then we fight. That night, as I folded the quilt again, a message buzzed on my phone. Unknown number. Just one line. Stop digging or you'll regret it. I sat frozen, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound. Somewhere out there, someone was watching me. And I realized this wasn't just fraud. It was war. I couldn't avoid it any longer. The unanswered call, the abrupt hang-up, it all gnawed at me. So that evening, with the folder of photocopied statements tucked inside my bag, I asked Sarah to drive me across town. The air was heavy, the kind that makes silence unbearable. My heart pounded as Melissa's house came into view, all warm light behind manicured hedges. I had once helped plant those hydrangeas with her years ago when she first moved in. Now I felt like an intruder. Melissa opened the door halfway. Her expression froze when she saw me. "Mom, you shouldn't just show up." "Melissa," I said, keeping my voice steady, "we need to talk. Please." She hesitated, then stepped aside. The living room smelled faintly of baby lotion, though no baby was yet here. The sight of a half-assembled crib in the corner twisted something in me. This was supposed to be joyful. Melissa crossed her arms. "So what's so urgent?" I pulled the papers from my bag and laid them on the coffee table. "The bank called. They say I owe $75,000, with my signature, and yours as witness." Her lips parted. She glanced at the papers but didn't touch them. "Mom, maybe you forgot signing something. You've been under a lot of stress, sometimes memory." The words cut me deeper than any knife. "Melissa." I whispered I may forget where I set my glasses, but not $75,000. Before she could reply, footsteps echoed down the hall. Derek appeared, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened. He smirked like a man who had been waiting for this. "Well, well," he drawled. "The wandering matriarch returns. What's the problem this time?" I straightened my shoulders. "The problem is forgery. My name was stolen. Your company took that money." His eyes flicked toward the documents. He didn't flinch. "You know memory isn't what it used to be at your age. Maybe you signed and just forgot. Happens all the time with seniors." I felt my stomach churn. The audacity. "Don't you dare patronize me." Melissa's voice wavered. "Derek." But he cut her off with a raised hand. "No, let's be honest. How old are you now, Rosa 70? Things slip. People confuse dates' faces. Banks wouldn't release money without certainty. Maybe you should consider stop." My voice cracked like thunder. "You can belittle me, Derek, but you will not rewrite my life. I know what I signed and I know what I didn't. You framed me." For a moment, the room froze. Melissa looked between us, panic flickering across her face. I leaned closer to her, lowering my tone. "Sweetheart, if you signed anything, if you were misled, you need to tell me. This isn't just paperwork. This is my home, my life. They will take everything." Tears welled in her eyes, but she shook her head quickly. I don't remember. Derek handled most of it." "There we go," Derek interjected smoothly, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "She doesn't remember, and maybe you don't either. That makes two forgetful women in one room." The fury that rose in me almost stole my breath. I looked straight into his eyes. "You're bold enough to lie in front of me, in front of your wife. You think her silence protects you." Derek Truth has a way of crawling out even through locked doors. He chuckled, but I caught the tightness in his jaw. "Careful with accusations, Rosa. Without proof, you're just an old woman crying wolf." I pulled the photocopies from my folder, the transfers from my supposed loan into Derek's LLC. I slid them across the table. Proof enough. His smirk faltered just for a second before he snatched the papers and tossed them back. Photocopies. Anyone could have made these. They mean nothing." Melissa's hands trembled. She whispered almost to herself, "I remember going with you to the bank. You said it was routine, just confirming Mom's information." Derek's glare snapped to her. "Melissa, don't." She went pale, shrinking under his stare. I reached for her hand across the table. "Look at me, Melissa. If you didn't know if he tricked you, you can still make this right. But if you stay silent, you become part of it." Her fingers twitched under mine, then pulled back. She looked away. "I can't. Not now." My chest tightened, but I forced calm into my voice. "Then hear me. I will not let this stand. You may be my daughter, but I will fight this until the truth burns through every lie." Derek leaned in close, his breath sharp with arrogance. "Fight all you want. Courts believe documents. Banks believe signatures. And you're just a grandmother with shaky hands and no allies. Nobody listens to your kind anymore." I stood, my spine rigid. "You're wrong. People listen when the story is true. And mine is." Melissa whispered, "Mom, please don't make this worse." I looked at her one last time, memorizing the fear etched into her face, then turned to Derek. "I won't make it worse. You already did." I walked out Sarah, waiting in the car across the street. My hands shook as I closed the door, but my voice was steady when I said, "He thinks age makes me weak. He has no idea." I thought I was prepared for anything, but nothing could have braced me for the chill of that conference room. The blinds were drawn halfway, leaving stripes of light across the polished table. My hands were clenched in my lap knuckles, pale, while Sarah sat stiffly beside me. Across from us was Mr. Franklin, the bank's attorney, neat gray suit, glasses balanced low on his nose, eyes sharp but impersonal. He cleared his throat, adjusted a file, and said with deliberate slowness, "Mrs. Alvarez, we've reviewed the documents thoroughly. Everything appears valid, signature matches, notarized witness, all in order." I felt my stomach collapse inward. "But it's not mine. I never signed for $75,000. His gaze didn't waver. "The signature is indistinguishable from yours. Our handwriting experts confirmed. Additionally, we have a witness signature, Melissa Marshall, your daughter. She was present. The name struck like a hammer. My own daughter. She must have been deceived," I whispered. He folded his hands, tone detached. "We have no reason to believe she was. Legally, this is solid. Unless you produce evidence to the contrary, the liability remains yours." The room spun slightly. I gripped the edge of the chair, the weight of humiliation pressing down. My daughter's name next to mine tethered me to debt I never created. Sarah leaned forward, her voice sharp. "You're saying an elderly woman who has no history of borrowing such a sum suddenly takes out a massive loan, and your conclusion is simply, it checks out. That doesn't strike you as suspicious." Mr. Franklin adjusted his glasses. "Suspicion isn't evidence. Our responsibility is to honor the documentation on record." I heard my own voice break. "They're going to take my house, aren't they?" He didn't flinch. "If payments aren't made, foreclosure is the standard procedure, unless the debt is repaid or resolved." I lowered my head, heat stinging behind my eyes. For a moment I wanted to give up. What was left of my dignity had been shredded first by my daughter's betrayal, now by a system that saw me as a weak, aging signature on a page. Sarah touched my arm, grounding me. "Rosa," she murmured. I shook my head. Maybe Derek's right. Maybe I should stop. Maybe I don't have the strength to fight all this. The silence stretched, broken only by the faint tick of the clock. Mr. Franklin closed the file as though the matter was already sealed. That's when Sarah spoke low but fierce. "That's what they count on. Men like him. Institutions like this. They count on women like us giving up. Rosa don't hand him victory by surrendering." I looked at her, my throat raw. "But every door is shutting. What can I even do?" She squeezed my hand hard. "Then we find another door. We look harder. We make noise. If the law doesn't listen to whispers, we shout." Mr. Franklin exhaled as though tired of our defiance. You're free to pursue independent counsel, but as far as the bank is concerned, the case is closed. Payment schedules will begin in 30 days. I felt the words settle like lead. Case closed. My life reduced to ledger lines. Sarah stood abruptly. Then this meeting is over. Rosa, come on. I followed her out, though my legs felt hollow. The hallway seemed too long, each step an echo of defeat. By the time we reached the parking lot, I broke. Tears spilled unbidden, and I pressed my sleeve to my face. Sarah, I can't, I whispered. He's too strong. He has papers, signatures, lawyers. And me, I have nothing but my word. Who would believe me over them? Sarah turned to me sharply. Me. I believe you. And if I do, others can too. Don't you see? That's what terrifies Derek, that someone will start listening. I let out a broken laugh. Listening doesn't erase debt. Her eyes glinted with fire. No, but truth can. We just haven't found the right crack in his armor yet. Think about it. Melissa hesitated. Remember? She almost admitted something. That's leverage. That's human. Derek may hold papers, but we know he forced her hand. I wiped my face, my chest still aching. She won't stand against him. She's too afraid. Then we find a way to give her courage, or we find proof that doesn't depend on her. The drive back to her house was quiet. I stared out the window, replaying every detail, every word Derek had thrown at me, forgetful, old, irrelevant. I had almost believed him. When we parked, Sarah turned off the engine and faced me. Rosa, listen. You raised students for 30 years. You taught kids who thought they were worthless to read to believe they mattered. You can't tell me that same woman doesn't have fight left in her. Her words struck deep. I remembered those children, their hesitant voices, the way their eyes lit up when they finally understood a sentence. I had fought for them. Couldn't I fight for myself, too? I took a long, shaky breath. He wants me broken. He wants me silent. Maybe I can't win, but I can't let him see me crawl. That's the spirit, Sarah said firmly. And trust me, Rosa, he's not invincible. Everyone leaves traces. We'll find his. I nodded slowly, the bitterness still raw, but tempered by a flicker of resolve. For now, I had stumbled, nearly surrendered. But the game wasn't finished. I returned to the bank 2 days later, not because I wanted to, but because the weight of defeat hadn't let me sleep. Sarah urged me to rest, but I couldn't. Something inside whispered, "You missed something. Go back." The lobby hummed with quiet voices and footsteps on marble. I went to the counter, my chest tight, and asked to see the loan file again. The teller gave me a polite but tired look, then passed me to a younger employee, no older than 25. She had her hair in a tight bun, a badge that read, Anna Martinez. "Mrs. Sarah," she asked softly. Yes, I nodded, clutching my purse. She glanced over her shoulder, then leaned closer. "I remember you. From the other day." Her voice dropped even lower. "I shouldn't say this, but I remember Derek coming here months ago asking questions about loan forms." My heart skipped. Derek? He's not even the account holder. That's exactly why I thought it was odd. Anna's eyes darted to the side. "He wasn't listed, but he insisted he had power of attorney for you. He wanted to know the procedure if a senior account holder needed help signing quickly. He asked about what IDs we accept." I gripped the counter harder. "Did he show you anything?" She swallowed. "Yes, a photocopy of your driver's license. But the edges looked off, too sharp, like it was printed." I flagged it in my notes, but my supervisor dismissed it, said as long as the signature and witness matched the system would approve. For the first time in days, the fog in my head cracked. Anna. That means he used a fake ID. He prepped the whole thing. Her face was pale. "I can't officially testify. If management knows I said this, I could lose my job." I placed my trembling hand over hers. "You already helped me more than you know. Thank you." As I stepped back, my pulse thundered. A fake ID. That explained why the file looked airtight. Derek had manufactured proof before the day ever came. Sarah met me outside, waiting in the car. The moment I slid into the seat, I told her everything. She slammed her palm against the wheel. That snake. He rehearsed the fraud, lined up every safeguard, and used Melissa as the perfect shield. I closed my eyes, but it means I'm not losing my mind. Someone else saw it too. Sarah leaned closer. We need to make Anna talk officially. No, I shook my head. She's young, scared. If she steps forward now, Derek's lawyers will shred her. But I can use what she gave me. How I tapped my purse. There are procedures. When someone uses ID, there are timestamps, logs in the system, surveillance cameras near the counter, sometimes digital scans. If Derek was here, there's a trace. Sarah's eyes widened. You really think they'd still have it? I nodded. Banks keep everything for years. Even if they try to bury it, those records exist. I just need the right leverage to see them. That night, I sat at Sarah's kitchen table, papers spread out. For the first time in weeks, my mind felt alive, sharp, like it used to when I graded essays or caught plagiarism in student reports. Derek wanted me to believe I was too old, too tired to notice. But I notice now. I started listing fake ID need proof of its use. Anna's recollection can't be public yet. Melissa's hesitation, emotional leverage, not legal yet. Security logs, potential goldmine. The problem, access. Sarah, I murmured, I need someone who can request logs without raising flags. She frowned. That's not exactly something we can walk into. But then she remembered. Wait, my nephew works in IT for Wells Fargo's regional office. He doesn't handle loans, but he knows the system. He owes me a favor. I blinked. Would he risk it? She gave a half smile. For me, he might. The next day, she called him. We kept it vague, said we needed timestamp data on a customer interaction, nothing sensitive. After hours of back and forth, he agreed to discreetly check. By evening, Sarah handed me a folded note. March 4th. Derek's name showed up on a visitor log tied to your account number. He wasn't authorized, but the system marked the access as assisted request. I felt my pulse surge. There. That's the crack. He shouldn't have been there under my number. It wasn't foolproof, but it was something solid. If tied with Anna's memory, it painted a picture of manipulation. That night, I sat, staring at the slip of paper, the date glowing in my mind. March 4th. I remembered that week I was in physical therapy after my fall. I couldn't have possibly been at the bank. Derek had chosen the perfect time when I was immobile, relying on others. My fists clenched. He planned every step, but he left footprints. Sarah saw the fire in my eyes. You're not giving up now, are you? Not anymore, I said firmly. He thinks old age means blindness, but I see him now. For the first time since this nightmare began, hope trickled in, not bright, not triumphant, but steady. Still, when I lay in bed later, I felt the weight of solitude. No lawyer yet, no official witness ready to stand. Just me, Sarah, and a thread of truth. But sometimes I thought threads are enough to weave a net. Sarah drove me across town on a rainy Thursday evening. The windshield wipers thumped in steady rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. I sat in silence, staring at the blur of lights. My chest felt heavy, half with dread, half with something I hadn't dared to name anticipation. When we parked outside a modest community center, I frowned. Sarah, what is this place? She smiled faintly. Trust me. Just come inside. The moment we stepped through the doors, warmth wrapped around me, not from the heaters, but from the sound of women's voices, laughter, murmurs, the soft clink of coffee cups. A circle of gray-haired women sat in folding chairs, some with scarves draped over their shoulders, others with notebooks open. They looked ordinary grandmothers, widows, retirees, yet there was something in their eyes, steel behind kindness. Sarah whispered, "Welcome to the Silver Circle." One woman, tall and elegant in a burgundy coat, approached me. "You must be Rosa." "I'm Evelyn." She extended her hand. Her grip was firm, not tentative. Sarah told us a bit about you. I hesitated. She did, Evelyn nodded gently. Only enough so we'd understand. You're not alone, dear. Before I could reply, another woman chimed in. I lost my house because my son forged my name on a refinancing deal, she said bluntly. Took me 3 years to fight it, but I won. Across the circle, a shorter woman added, my nephew used my savings to start a business, claimed I authorized it. Court believed him at first. Now he's paying me back every dime. Their words stunned me. Each story mirrored mine, different faces, same betrayal. Evelyn gestured for me to sit. This group exists because we were all told to be quiet, to forgive, to accept humiliation because we're mothers, grandmothers. But here we fight. I sank into a chair. For weeks I had felt isolated, like my pain was a bizarre nightmare no one could understand. But hearing them, I realized I was part of a larger pattern one Derek had counted on. I don't even know where to start, I confessed, my voice cracking. The bank has papers. My daughter, she signed as a witness. Everyone says I'm imagining things. The women leaned closer. Not a single one dismissed me. Evelyn raised a hand. Let's break it down. First, the bank papers. They're not holy scripture. If a signature was obtained under false pretenses or with a fake ID involved, it can be challenged. Did you gather any evidence? I swallowed. Yes. A young teller, Anna. She remembered Derek asking questions months before. She noticed a fake ID copy, and I found a log entry showing he accessed my account on March 4th. I was in physical therapy that day. Murmurs rippled around the circle. One woman scribbled in her notebook, "That's not just suspicion, that's a trail." Another leaned forward. "We have a lawyer, Patricia. She specializes in elder financial abuse. Judges respect her. We can connect you." Hope flickered in my chest, but doubt chased it quickly. Even if I get a lawyer, Melissa, my own daughter, stood as witness. How can I fight against that? The circle fell silent for a moment. Then Evelyn spoke quietly. Blood doesn't excuse betrayal. Sometimes family hurts us most, but truth doesn't vanish just because it's uncomfortable. You need to separate love from law. Tears stung my eyes. For so long, I'd begged Melissa to see me, to protect me. Now here were strangers telling me what I couldn't admit. Sarah squeezed my hand. "Listen to them, Grandma. They've walked this road." A woman named Marjorie raised her cup. "You want to know what kept me going? A phrase we repeat here. They count on our silence. We answer with persistence." The circle echoed softly like a prayer. Persistence. I whispered it too, my throat tight. For the next hour, they shared strategies. How to document every conversation. How to demand surveillance footage preservation before it's deleted. Which nonprofits provided expert witnesses on handwriting fraud. How to petition the state attorney general's office when banks dragged their feet. Every word was like a lantern in the darkness. I scribbled furiously, my hand aching, but I didn't care. At one point, Evelyn leaned closer. "Rosa, I want you to hear me. You are not frail, you are not senile, you are a woman who worked, raised children, built a life. Do not let them reduce you to a signature on a page." I felt something shift inside me. For weeks, Derek's voice had echoed. "Maybe your memory isn't what it used to be." Tonight, another voice replaced it. Strong, clear, unyielding. When the meeting ended, I stood. I came here thinking I had nothing left. Tonight, I leave with something I didn't expect. Evelyn tilted her head. "And what's that, Faith?" I said simply. "Not just in the law, in myself." The women smiled, some nodding with tears in their eyes. As Sarah and I walked back into the rainy night, she asked, "So what do you think?" I gripped her arm. "I think Derek has no idea what's coming." For the first time, the weight on my chest eased. I wasn't just Rosa, the grandmother under siege. I was Rosa, part of the Silver Circle, and together, silver could cut sharper than steel. I never thought a group of grandmothers could move faster than corporate lawyers, but the silver circle proved me wrong. Within days, Evelyn had tapped into her network, retired clerks, cousins working in legal offices, even an old friend still employed at the bank's compliance department. They moved with quiet precision, each favor called in like a chess piece sliding into place. Late one afternoon, my phone buzzed. It was Sarah. "Grandma, they found it. You need to come." My pulse kicked up. I grabbed my coat and hurried out, praying this wasn't another dead end. At Evelyn's living room, a laptop glowed on the coffee table. Around it, the women sat in silence, their faces tight with anticipation. Evelyn gestured for me to sit. "Rosa, this might be what we needed all along." She hit play. The footage wasn't crisp, just a bank's security camera angle, but clear enough. Derek appeared at the counter, bulky in his tailored coat, clutching a thick file. My breath caught as I leaned closer. He slid the papers across to the teller, Anna. She glanced up, hesitated, then called someone over. A moment later, Melissa entered the frame. My heart twisted seeing my daughter there. She didn't look suspicious or cunning. She looked distracted. Her phone in one hand, she barely scanned the first page. Derek tapped a line, and without reading further, Melissa signed at the witness section. The camera caught everything. Derek's impatient glance, the way he pressed his palm flat on the papers as if to block her view, and Melissa's hurried scrawl of her name before returning to her phone. I whispered, "She didn't know." Sarah touched my shoulder. "Exactly. He used her just like he used you." The room was silent except for the faint hum of the laptop. I stared at the screen as tears blurred my vision. For weeks I had cursed Melissa in my heart, imagining her complicit. But here she was, careless, yes, but not malicious. She was a pawn in Derek's scheme. Evelyn folded her hands. "This is strong evidence, Rosa, not just forgery, coercion, and manipulation. It shows your daughter never truly witnessed with understanding. That undermines the document's validity." "But will she admit it?" I asked, my voice trembling. Melissa's pride. She'd rather believe Derek than admit she was blind. One of the women, Marjorie, leaned forward. "Sometimes the truth is sharper than pride. You show her this, she can't unsee it." I nodded slowly, though doubt gnawed at me. That night, sleep eluded me. I replayed the footage again and again, each time seeing new details: Melissa's distracted eyes, Derek's calculated movements, Anna's nervous glance. I lay in bed wondering, would Melissa finally see Derek for what he was, or would she resent me for tearing the veil away? The next morning, I called her. My hand shook as I dialed, but when she answered, I forced steadiness into my voice. "Melissa, we need to talk. In person." Her sigh was heavy. "Mom, I don't want to fight again. I'm not calling to fight. Just meet me. Please." After a pause, she agreed. We met at a small cafe near her office. She arrived in her crisp blazer, her hair perfectly styled, but the dark circles under her eyes betrayed sleepless nights. I clutched the flash drive in my hand like it was a lifeline. "Melissa," I began softly, "I thought you betrayed me. But now I know Derek betrayed us both." Her brow furrowed. "What are you talking about?" I slid the laptop toward her and pressed play. She watched at first with a blank expression. Then her lips parted slightly, her fingers tightening around her coffee cup. When her own face appeared on screen, distracted signing without reading, color drained from her cheeks. That's me," she whispered. "Yes," I said gently. "You didn't read. You didn't see what you were signing." Derek made sure of it. Her eyes darted to mine, defensive. "I was only there because he said you needed a witness." I thought her voice cracked. "I thought I was helping you." I reached across the table, covering her trembling hand. "I know. I see it now. Melissa, you didn't help me, you helped him. But unknowingly, you're a victim too." Tears welled in her eyes. She pulled her hand back, pressing her fingers against her temples. "All this time, I believed him. He said you were confused, that you'd forgotten. Mom, She broke off, shaking her head. How could I have been so blind? The bitterness in her voice wasn't directed at me this time. It was at herself. I leaned forward. Because you trusted him. Because you loved him. That's what manipulators count on. Melissa stared at the paused image of Derek on the screen, his hand blocking her view of the papers. Slowly she whispered, "He used me." Yes. My voice was steady now, the weight of weeks lifting. And now, you know the truth. For a long moment she said nothing. Then with a deep breath she looked up at me. Her eyes were red, but there was fire in them. "What do you want me to do?" I swallowed hard. "Stand with me. Admit what happened. Tell the truth in court. If you do that, we can end this." Her gaze lingered on mine, torn between shame and resolve. Finally, she nodded. "I'll do it. I won't let him destroy us." Relief crashed over me like a wave. For the first time, I wasn't fighting alone. When I returned to Evelyn and the others that evening, I shared the news. The room erupted with soft cheers, pats on my back, knowing smiles. Evelyn clasped my hand. "This is it, Rosa, the turning point." But deep inside, I knew the hardest part was still ahead, standing in court, facing Derek with the evidence and my daughter by my side. As I walked home under the streetlights, I felt something unfamiliar yet powerful momentum. Derek had always counted on me being alone, silenced, ashamed. But now with Melissa awakened and the silver circle behind me, his fortress had its first crack, and I intended to drive a wedge through it until the whole thing collapsed. I thought the courtroom would be the battlefield where Derek finally faced justice, but in truth, the first real collapse of his image happened outside those walls. It began at the one place he never expected, the church. Our town church had always been more than a building. It was where children were baptized, weddings were blessed, and neighbors supported each other through funerals. And Derek, ever conscious of appearances, had made sure to be seen there, often smiling, shaking hands, offering polished words about family values. For years, people saw him as a model son-in-law, a successful man with influence. But secrets have a way of spilling, and with the Silver Circle's help, word of Derek's scheme spread discreetly at first, then with gathering force. By the following Sunday, the pews buzzed with whispers before the service even began. I walked in with Melissa and Sarah on either side of me. I felt exposed, every eye darting in our direction. But for once, I didn't shrink. I had nothing to hide. When the service ended, Father Thomas stood at the pulpit, his voice steady but laced with steel. He didn't mince words. "Brothers and sisters," he said, his gaze sweeping the room, "it has come to my attention that one among us has committed a grave betrayal. Stealing from your wife's mother is not merely theft, it is stealing from God's family. Such actions corrode trust, tear at the bonds of kinship, and dishonor our community." A hush fell. No names had been spoken, but everyone turned toward Derek. He shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his jaw tight, Melissa stiff beside him. I felt my heart hammer, but a strange calm settled over me too. For the first time, it wasn't just my voice against his. It was the community's conscience speaking aloud. Derek rose suddenly, forcing a smile. "Father, with respect, you've been misinformed. I would never." But Father Thomas cut him off with quiet authority. "The truth is plain, Derek. God sees all. And so does this community. Your deceit has wounded not only your own family, but every person who trusted you." The air was thick with tension. Then, to my shock, Anna, the young bank clerk who had first whispered the truth to me, stood up from a pew near the back. Her voice trembled, but she spoke clearly. "I saw him. Months ago. He came asking about forms he wasn't entitled to. I didn't understand then, but I do now. He lied." A murmur rippled through the congregation. Derek's face flushed crimson. "This is slander," he snapped. But another voice joined in Mr. Harding, a gray-haired man Derek had long boasted of playing golf with. Slander I've heard enough, Derek. I vouched for you to my colleagues. I introduced you at my firm's events, and all the while you were stealing from your own family. You make a fool of everyone who trusted you." The tide turned visibly. People Derek once charmed now looked at him with open disgust. Whispers grew into blunt remarks. Shameful. How could he? I trusted him with my accounts. I sat frozen, both terrified and vindicated. I had feared no one would ever believe me. Now the truth was unspooling in front of everyone, unstoppable. Derek tried to leave, tugging Melissa by the arm, but she resisted. She shook her head sharply, tears welling in her eyes. For the first time, she pulled away from him in public. "I signed because you told me it was safe," she said, her voice breaking. "I defended you to my mother, and now I see what you are." The church fell silent again. Derek stared at her, betrayed. "Melissa, not you, too." But she stood taller, lifting her chin. "Especially me. You used me. That ends today." It was as though a dam burst. People Derek had cultivated, friends, neighbors, even colleagues from his law firm who happened to attend the church, stood and walked out, some without looking at him, others shaking their heads in open reproach. By the end of that week, the shame had spread beyond the pews. Derek's phone calls went unanswered. His golfing partners canceled tea times. Invitations dried up. Even his law firm announced he was on indefinite leave pending investigation. I never gloated. In fact, watching him unravel filled me with a mix of relief and sorrow. This was the man my daughter had married, the father of my grandchildren, and yet his downfall was of his own making. One evening I stepped onto my porch and found my neighbor, Mrs. Lewis, waiting. She clasped my hands in hers. "Rosa, we didn't know. We should have seen the signs. But you," her eyes glistened, "you showed us that standing up matters. You reminded us we can't turn away from truth just because it's uncomfortable." Her words warmed me, but also weighed heavy, because truth wasn't just a victory, it was responsibility. Later that week, the Silver Circle gathered again. I told them what had happened at church, how Derek's image was crumbling. Evelyn leaned forward. "Community shame is powerful. Courts deal with law, but neighbors, friends, they deal with trust. Once broken, it rarely returns." I thought of Derek alone in his house, his phone silent, and I wondered, did he regret what he had done or only that he was caught? Sarah curled up beside me on the couch that night, her young face serious. "Grandma, does this mean we won?" I stroked her hair gently. "Not yet. The law still has to decide. But it means we're not alone anymore. People see the truth now. That changes everything." And she smiled a soft, hopeful smile that reminded me of why I had fought so hard. As the days passed, I realized something profound Derek had always thrived in. Shadows, closed offices, whispered lies. Papers signed unseen, but under the light of the community, under the eyes of God and neighbors alike, he shrank. His power depended on silence, and now silence was gone. For the first time, I no longer felt small. The courthouse smelled faintly of polish and dust, the kind of scent that carried both authority and unease. As I sat beside my lawyer, Mr. Hanley, I clutched the edge of my quilt folded neatly in a bag by my feet. That quilt was more than fabric. It was history, my promise to Sarah, and the one piece of home no one could take. The judge entered solemn and steady, and the room rose. My heart pounded, but I told myself this was no longer just about me. It was about truth. Mr. Hanley presented the evidence carefully, each step precise, like stitching a delicate pattern. "Your Honor," he said, holding up the video footage we had fought to obtain, this recording shows Derek Walker arriving at the bank alone, submitting documents not in his name. Later, his wife Melissa is seen signing as a so-called witness, never reading the content. We also have handwriting analysis proving Rosa's signature was forged. The screen flickered with grainy footage, but it was clear enough Derek in his press suit sliding papers across the counter. Melissa, nervous and distracted, scribbling her name without looking. The courtroom rustled. Melissa, sitting 2 rows behind Derek, buried her face in her hands. The bank's representative stood his tone clipped. "We regret to confirm the signature attributed to Mrs. Rosa Martinez is fraudulent. Our internal safeguards failed in this case. We acknowledge negligence." That admission felt like a stone lifting from my chest. For months, I had doubted my own memory, my own worth. Now at last, the institution itself admitted I was right. Derek shot up, his voice cracking. "This is absurd." She agreed. She wanted to transfer. "Enough," the judge snapped his gavel, striking once. "The evidence is irrefutable. Mr. Walker, you will face civil and potentially criminal proceedings. This court orders restitution of all assets wrongfully taken from Mrs. Martinez." A collective exhale filled the room. I felt tears prick my eyes. It wasn't triumph, it was vindication. But Derek wasn't finished. He raged, pacing like a trapped animal. "You don't understand, I had debts I had to." That was when the skeletons began to pour out. A creditor, a man with sharp eyes and a thin mustache, stood from the back. "Debts. You owe me $40,000, Walker. You pawned your watch, your wife's jewelry, even electronics from your house, and still you haven't paid." The courtroom gasped. Melissa's head snapped up, horror etched across her face. "You pawned my grandmother's locket." Derek froze, caught between anger and shame. It was temporary. I was going to get it back. But the man sneered. "You won't. It's already gone." The words hit Melissa like a slap. She sobbed openly now, realizing she hadn't only lost trust, she had lost pieces of her family's legacy. And then came another blow. A colleague of Derek's law firm spoke up reluctantly. "Your Honor, I must add, Mr. Walker has been under internal review for misappropriating client funds. We hadn't intended to disclose it yet, but given today's proceedings..." The judge's eyes hardened. Derek's polished mask crumbled entirely. He no longer looked like the confident son-in-law who had lorded over family dinners. He looked like a man cornered by the truth stripped bare. Melissa whispered, "Broken. All this time. You weren't protecting us. You were destroying us." I wanted to reach for her to comfort her, but my hands stayed on my quilt. I had learned my boundaries. Love didn't mean blind forgiveness. When the judge delivered the final verdict, his words echoed like church bells. "This court recognizes Mrs. Rosa Martinez as the rightful owner of her assets. Mr. Walker is hereby liable for restitution pending criminal charges." Court adjourned. The gavel fell. The sound was sharp, final, undeniable. As people filed out, I remained seated, breathing deeply. Melissa lingered nearby, hesitant. Finally, she spoke. "Mom, Her voice cracked. "I should have believed you. I should have read before I signed." I turned to her, my heart aching. "You were manipulated, Melissa. We both were. But denial doesn't excuse what happened. You need to decide who you'll stand with now, him or the truth." She nodded slowly, eyes wet. "I'll never stand with him again." Outside the courthouse, the air felt fresher, lighter. Reporters swarmed, neighbors whispered, but I focused only on Sarah, who ran to me with open arms. "Grandma, you did it." I hugged her tightly. "No, sweetheart, we did it, and now we move forward." Meanwhile, Derek's world collapsed further. Creditors descended. His car was repossessed. Furniture vanished from his home, sold to cover debts. Friends cut him off completely. Even his law license came under suspension. He tried to play the victim, but no one listened. The man who once prided himself on control now stumbled under the weight of his own lies. I didn't need revenge. Life itself was handing him the consequences. Weeks later, as autumn leaves fell, I sat on my porch with Sarah. The quilt lay across our laps, warm and familiar. Melissa had started attending counseling through the church, trying to rebuild her strength. She wasn't forgiven overnight, but she was taking steps, and that mattered. Sarah traced a hand along the stitches. "So this quilt stays with us, right?" "Yes," I said firmly. "It stays with us because it carries truth, and because it reminds us of what can't be taken not by forged papers, not by lies, not by fear." She leaned against me, smiling softly. And for the first time in years, I felt something stronger than anger or grief. I felt peace. Justice hadn't erased the scars, but it had given me back my voice, my dignity, my place in the world. And as long as I held on to that and to Sarah, I knew I was never truly alone. Derek's punishment came swifter than even I expected. The court found him guilty not only of fraud, but also of multiple counts of financial misappropriation tied to his law practice. He was sentenced to 7 years in state prison, stripped of his license, and ordered to pay restitution he could never realistically cover. His name, once plastered on office doors and gala invitations, now appeared in headlines alongside the word convict. When I first heard the sentence, I didn't feel triumphant. I simply felt the weight of months, years maybe slide off my shoulders. Justice had spoken, and I didn't need to add anything more. Melissa filed for separation soon after. It was painful, messy, but necessary. She admitted to me quietly one evening, "Mom, I should have seen the cracks. I wanted to believe in him so badly that I ignored everything." I squeezed her hand. We all want to believe the best of the ones we love. The important part is you're free now. Weeks later, the world around me began to feel gentler. My garden bloomed again, and I had mornings where coffee tasted rich instead of bitter. Sarah spent more time with me, her laughter echoing in my living room, filling spaces that had been silent too long. But the moment that stayed, etched deepest, was when I stood before my friends at the Silver Circle. The Silver Circle was our local seniors group, a place where widows, retirees, and old friends gathered twice a month in the church hall. That night, the folding chairs were full. I saw faces that had prayed for me, people who had sent casseroles when the court hearings drained me, neighbors who had defended me when Derek tried to slander my name. When Father Raymond asked if I wanted to speak, I rose slowly, the quilt folded over my arm. My heart beat fast, but I told myself to speak simply. They tried to steal my name. I began my voice clear, though my throat was tight. They thought a forged paper could erase me. But I learned something. Our true inheritance isn't money. It isn't houses or accounts. It's dignity, and dignity cannot be forged. The room grew quiet. Some people nodded, others wiped their eyes. I went on. When your old people think you're easy to trick, they think you forget that you'll stay silent, but we aren't invisible. And when we stand together, even lies can't last. An old friend of mine, Clara, spoke up from the second row. "You gave us courage, Rosa. You didn't let them silence you." I shook my head softly. "No, Clara. I just remembered something my mother once said. If you let someone steal your dignity, they'll steal your soul next." I wasn't ready to let that happen. Not for me and not for Sarah. Sarah, sitting beside me, squeezed my hand. "Grandma, you're the bravest person I know." Laughter and tears mingled in the room. It wasn't a rallying cry, not some grand declaration. It was family community, a circle of silver-haired fighters who knew that even when the world tried to forget them, they still mattered. After the meeting, people lingered. They shared their own stories about sons who borrowed money and never repaid, about neighbors who tried to cheat them on property lines, about being dismissed in doctors' offices. I realized my story wasn't just mine. It was ours. As the weeks rolled on, life began to weave itself into a new pattern. Melissa moved into a smaller house, humble but hers. She started working part-time at the library, a place she said made her feel safe with books that never lie. We weren't best friends overnight, but we began talking, really talking for the first time in years. One afternoon, she came over with a tentative smile. "Mom, I'm expecting again." My breath caught. A baby, a chance for healing. When her daughter was born, they placed that tiny bundle in my arms. The quilt lay over my shoulders, heavy with history, and the baby's warmth seeped into me like sunlight. I looked at her tiny fingers curling against my skin. All the betrayal, the forged signatures, the courtrooms, they seemed small compared to this fragile life. "This," I whispered to Sarah, who watched me closely, "is the real legacy. Not money, not titles. Love, family, the promise that we will protect each other. Sarah nodded, her teenage eyes shining. And dignity, right, Grandma, yes, I said, kissing the newborn's head. Dignity most of all. In that moment, I didn't crave revenge. I didn't need Derek to rot or Melissa to grovel. Justice had already carved its path. What mattered now was the softness of a baby's breath, the reconnection with my daughter, the strength of my community. I carried the baby to the window where sunlight poured in like a blessing. Her eyes fluttered open, and for a second, I thought she looked straight into me as if asking silently, "Will you keep me safe?" "Yes," I whispered again, my voice trembling with promise. "Always." The silver circle continued meeting, and each time I went, someone would ask me to retell the story. I did, but always briefly, always humbly. Because I didn't want to be remembered as the woman who fought a fraud. I wanted to be remembered as the grandmother who held her ground, who taught her family that no paper could measure worth. Sometimes, late at night, I still thought of Derek, of the man who once smiled across my kitchen table, then twisted into someone unrecognizable. I didn't forgive him, not fully, but I also didn't carry him with me anymore. He was a chapter, closed his punishment, written in the record of his own choices. What remained was life. My garden, my laughter with Sarah, my conversations with Melissa, the soft weight of a newborn against my chest. That was the inheritance I chose to pass on. And as I sat rocking my granddaughter in the quiet of my living room quilt draped across us both, I finally understood dignity isn't something the world gives you. It's something you decide to keep, no matter what storms try to strip it away. I kept mine, and that more than anything was enough.